Well, what have we here? Have we finally got a decent alternative for i3S owners who don't want to be held to ransom by Bridgestone's extortionate pricing on their 195/50 R20 rear tyre? Seems like we do. Stick around and let's find out all about this exciting development. Welcome back to the Wisely Automotive YouTube channel and to a video which, to be honest, I wasn't really expecting to make, certainly not so soon. If you are a regular subscriber and in particular an i3S owner, you will have seen a video we put out a few months ago regarding the subject of i3S tyres, in which Martin talked about the entire subject, which can be quite controversial. The video was somewhat misunderstood, with a lot of people taking it completely wrong, as if it was some kind of attack on people who are fitting the wrong size tyre to their i3Ss. First though, let's take a little step back and look at the root of this issue. So back in 2013, when the i3 was launched, the i3S didn't exist. You had just the i3 and you had 19-inch or 20-inch wheel options, and the Bridgestone Ecopia EP500 tyre was kind of reasonably priced. Quite soon after, you had a lot of manufacturers joining the party and offering tyres in all the required sizes. You had Nankang, you had Continental, you had Michelin, you had a few others, a lot of budget tyres as well. So you had premium options, budget options, you had summer options, all season options, winter options with a little bit of a caveat because you had to kind of change wheel sizes or stagger to square setup in some cases. But basically there was a lot of choice on the market and it was all fairly reasonably priced. There was a tyre for all budgets. Then the i3S came out, and true to what they did with the i3, BMW homologated the i3S using the Bridgestone Ecopia EP500 tyres. The tyres are 20 millimeters wider in their section, both front and rear. So where most non-S i3s are 155, 175, on the i3S you had 175 and 195. And until very recently, the only tyre available on the market, which was available in both those correct sizes, both section and aspect ratio and everything, was that Bridgestone EP500 tyre. You had manufacturers coming out with the rear, you had a lot of manufacturers offering the tyre that's fitted on the front because it is incidentally the rear tyre on a non-S with 20-inch wheels, but you really didn't have anyone who'd taken the plunge and offered both sizes, so that if you do want to run the same make and model of tyre all round on your i3S, you had an option other than the Bridgestone Ecopia EP500. The problem with the EP500 being the only tyre available is that it doesn't come with much tread. It seems to be paper thin in terms of puncture resistance. The sidewall is quite soft and wheels often buckle. And above all else, the main thing, which is the heart of this whole controversy, is that the rear tyre, the 195/50 R20, is extortionately priced at well over £200 most of the time here in the UK. Now, that's pretty much the price, well, not quite, but almost the price of two fronts. So if you want to do it properly and you want to have the same make and model tyre, front and rear, you've kind of been held to ransom to Bridgestone's extortionate pricing. So that pricing gets really quite annoying when you consider the i3 is rear wheel drive, and obviously swapping out a pair of them, you're paying twice that every 10, 15, maybe 20,000 miles if you're lucky. So it gets really expensive. Even more so if you're preparing hundreds of these to a really high retail standard, 3mm plus on all our cars. I've literally spent tens of thousands of pounds on this rear tyre over the years. So if there's anyone who wants a cheaper alternative to that rear Bridgestone i3S tyre, trust me, it's me. And the temptation to join the masses and start fitting the 195/55 tyre all round has been very tempting because it saves a lot of money. But unfortunately, it's just not something we can do here at Wisely Automotive. Don't get me wrong, I've seen a lot of even main dealers, car supermarkets, etc., releasing these cars with that size tyre. I've driven cars with those tyres fitted. If it's fitted all round, honestly, it feels good and I don't really have any complaints with it. Sometimes I do see the near side coil rubbing slightly. It depends on pressures and how hard you drive the car. a little spacer would solve that. However, what really doesn't feel safe, and I've driven it a few times and I will stand by this, is when the 195/55 is fitted to the rear and the 175s are, or the standard tyre is still fitted on the front. The car feels really wallowy and unstable. I really wouldn't recommend it, and I've seen both main dealers and car supermarkets and smaller dealers letting cars out like that. The repercussions are just huge. If, God forbid, there was an accident or something on a car that we've sold to a customer who just took their trust in, or put their trust in us that the car's been released with the correct size tyres, the repercussions are huge. Legal issues, God forbid if someone got hurt, it's not something I'm prepared to do. So as a result, we've had to endure, and we've just had to pay literally tens of thousands buying that rear 195/50 until now, it seems, because of what Dunlop have released just recently. So the point of the video a few months ago was to raise awareness to this issue and try and trigger some action from some of the manufacturers to basically join the party and offer an alternative to the Bridgestone offering, namely Michelin and Continental. The former we have spoken with several times, emailing them, trying to sort of make them realize the situation and that there's a hell of a lot of demand out there, but also Continental. And the reason I single out those two manufacturers, obviously they're premium manufacturers who make quality tyres, but in both cases, they already make the 175/55, so the front tyre for an i3S. Reason why, as per what I said at the beginning of the video, the i3S has 20mm wider tyres than the normal i3. So that tyre, the 175/55, is the same size as you would have on a non-S at the rear if you had the 20-inch style 430 wheels, which I'll overlay a photo of now. Given this, they've kind of already done half the work. They've already got the tyre for the front of the i3S, but not the rear. And the irony is that actually there's probably many, many more i3S's in circulation than there are non-S's with the 20-inch wheel upgrade. So actually that tyre they're making is for a fairly small pool of owners. And if they just added the 195/50 to their offering, they would have a huge market to tap into. Anyway, while Michelin and Continental have been sleeping, Dunlop have arrived onto the scene and pulled a blinder with this release. This is a manufacturer who's never offered i3 size tyres as far as I'm aware. And what they've offered here, both in price point and how it looks, etc., seems to be really compelling. Did they stumble upon the gap in the market in their own market research? Did they maybe find one of our YouTube videos on the subject? Who knows? We've reached out to them for comment, and if we get any updates, we'll definitely let you know in the next video on this subject. But the main thing right now is the chatter on the forums over the last few months. Is this tyre real? Does it exist? Well, it definitely does. This is literally the first set we've got, and now let's drill into it and find out a bit more about them. So what have we got? Well, let's get the obvious stuff out of the way, which is that this isn't a summer tyre. This is an all-season tyre. In fact, that is the name of the model of the tyre. From what I can see, it's literally called the Dunlop All Season 2. Size-wise, they are identical in terms of load rating, speed rating, etc. as the EP500. So Dunlop clearly did their homework to make sure that this car will satisfy all of the homologation requirements of the i3S. The sidewall feels a little bit stiffer than the EP500, but that's the case for pretty much every manufacturer who's made an alternative tyre to the EP500. Got to keep in mind the ethos of the EP500 was for it to be a super efficient tyre in terms of road resistance and stuff like that. So obviously by thinning out weight on the sidewall, I think you would get slightly better economy. So yeah, all season tyre. Kind of clever of Dunlop to have gone down this route, because it sort of kills two birds with one stone for i3S owners. Firstly, it gives them an alternative to the EP500. And secondly, a lot of i3S owners and i3 owners, especially here in the UK, kind of want to run one tyre all year round. We don't have the harsh winters that people in Scandinavia and Germany, etc., have, and also there, I think you know, it's a legal requirement in some countries to run proper winter tyres. So here in the UK, an all-season tyre is quite a good option. In fact, I recently fitted a set of all-seasons to one of our transit vans for mobile service. But let's have a look actually at what's going on in terms of sidewall marking. So, like I said, it's called the All-Season 2. That's the name of the model by the looks of it. And it's made in Slovenia, so immediately not as good as the EP500s because they're made in Poland. But that aside, what else have we got? So extra load, we've talked about that already. Interestingly, we've got an M+S rating. So it's a mud and snow tyre, which is kind of to be expected for it being an all-season. But it's also got the 3 Peaks Mountain Snow Performance. I never know the order, but that thing. So really, this is considered by whoever tests these things as a pretty capable winter tyre. I'm somewhat surprised by that because when you look at the tread, the sipes are quite small and there's not that many of them. But hey, if it's got that symbol, then it's clearly got some capability. In terms of the tread pattern itself, we're going to measure them in a second. But before we do that, let's talk about the fact that they are a V-groove, and that means they are directional. So the V-groove, well, that means we should have really good rain performance. Weirdly though, having said that, it looks like the ratings for these in terms of fuel and rain efficiency are BB for the rears, the 195s, and for the fronts, the 175s, it's BC. So actually the rain performance for the fronts is apparently worse than the EP500, which is really surprising because a V-groove pattern, a bit like a Uni Royal Rain Sport or whatever, is known as a really good tyre for or tread pattern for water dispersion, or whatever the right phrase is. So yeah, surprising, but good to know that at least in terms of all the other qualifications, it's at least the same as the EP500. I couldn't find a tread wear marking on either of these, so we'll have to sort of dig into that. Having said that, I've never really found tread wear markings to be that realistic in terms of what I've experienced in day-to-day use. Slight downside of them being in a V-groove tread pattern is obviously that they are rotational. There's a little marking on them and you have to commit to which side of the car that's going on. I guess it makes it slightly harder to rotate the tyres, but given it's a staggered setup, you're not exactly going to be rotating front to rear anyway, and having left and right, that's not something that's that important. If you're going to get a puncture, chances are you're going to have to take that tyre off and put a new one on. You're not going to be keeping spares of this. So yeah, I think overall a really good decision in terms of what they've gone for, and I think here in the UK this is going to be an incredibly popular tyre as long as its performance kind of stacks up with everything else. Let's get measuring. So I'll just get my tread gauge. We'll start with the front, which is this one. Let's swap them round just to not confuse anyone. This is the front of the car, that's the rear of the car. So I'll just reset this again. So the Ecopia EP500, you are getting really no more than about 6mm tread across 2 of the grooves. So just keep that in your mind as a reference. Now for us, when we're preparing i3s for sale, we have a minimum tread of 3mm on any of the grooves. So if any of the grooves are under 3, we replace the tyre. In terms of the EP500, you know, some of those grooves start with like 5.5mm. So it's a really unfair deal in that respect. So let's have a look at this. So the front, little bit difficult to measure exactly because we're not following 3 straight lines, but using these little colored markers as the outsides, we've got 6.1, we've got 7.5, and we've got 6.5. So that's the front, and we'll put up the measurements of the EP500 relative to these on the screen. The rear, I imagine, will be fairly similar. 6.5, middle is 7.7, let's say, and then this one here, 6.5. So quite a lot more than you get with the EP500, and as long as they wear similarly, that means you're going to get even better value out of them because they're going to last longer. So far, so good. Another thing to consider, somewhat important to some people, is the aesthetics. So obviously there isn't a defined outer sidewall because they're rotational, but if we look at this one here, fairly boring. There's nothing sort of particularly exciting going on, and in comparison to something like the Michelin sidewall, which obviously has the slight velvet finish and stuff, yeah, maybe loses 1 or 2 points, but who really cares? It's a tyre. So what's next? Well, these are, by the looks of it, literally fresh off the production line. This is being filmed in February, and you'll see by the date stamp on these, I think they were manufactured in 02/26, so they're literally a few weeks old. They were very difficult to get hold of, and I should point out at this point, we've paid for these ourselves. We don't have a relationship with Dunlop. We have reached out to them for comment, and I'll tell you what we've asked them in a moment, but yeah, well, there's no bias here, but we do need to get them fitted, and in a few weeks get back to you with a second video or some updates on what we think in terms of how they handle. And like I say, it won't be biased. We bought these ourselves. On that note, can I just clarify 2 things? We do not sell this tyre. Please do not reach out to us to buy the tyre from us. We found it on an online retailer. I think they came over from Germany. It took quite a long time. Do the same. Be patient, maybe wait and see what Dunlop do in terms of rolling it out properly. Secondly, also, please don't reach out to us for information about this tyre. The point of these videos is to let you guys be able to kind of self-serve yourselves with the information, and trust me when I say what's in this video is everything we know. If you've got some extra information, why not drop it in the comments below? But yeah, in terms of dropping us endless messages, asking us all sorts of questions, we're not the people to be asking. Speak with Dunlop, try and reach out to them. What have we reached out to them about? Well, we've asked them a few questions. Firstly, we've congratulated them on taking the initiative and finally giving Bridgestone a run for their money in terms of competition. And we've asked them whether they are looking to offer any other i3 tyre sizes. Obviously, in the opposite vein to what the situation Michelin are in, they've now got the rear tyre for a non-S on 20s, and they've got a design which can be manipulated a little bit to go down to the 19-inch, etc. Also, are they looking to maybe offer a summer tyre, maybe a winter tyre? Who knows? This is obviously a discontinued vehicle we're talking about, but there are hundreds of thousands of them out there, so it's still a pretty big market. Other things we've asked them is what are their plans in terms of distribution for these in the UK. Like I've said, it was quite difficult getting hold of these. They do appear on National Tyres website, which is a Halfords company, but it's really difficult trying to get them ordered, so I don't know if that's current or if it's actually possible, or is it that the website's only just updated and the stock hasn't arrived yet in the country. Obviously, if you're committing £500+ of your hard-earned to moving over from a known quantity that's always available to something that's just arrived, you want to know that production is going to keep happening, availability will always be available. If you get a puncture, you'll be able to replace one tyre. So yeah, these are all kind of questions that prospective owners will want. We've reached out, asked the questions. If there is an update, we will let you know in the next video about these. That's everything for now. We are going to go off and get these fitted to an i3S to report back. If you have any questions in particular, drop them in the comments and we will try and address them in the follow-up video to this. But for now, that is everything. Thank you firstly to Dunlop for their initiative, and fingers crossed the product is as good as we're hoping it is. And secondly, to yourselves for watching this video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please click here to do so. And if you want to watch that controversial video Martin did a few months ago about this very subject, click here. Thanks very much. See you in the next one.